Welcome to our session today, hosted by Saint-Gobain, which, as many of you know, is a global products and solution provider in the construction industry. The focus of our exchange today will be on the opportunities and challenges to rally the built environment sector around a common purpose and a net zero journey. My name is Sophie Lambin, and I'm delighted to be your moderator today for what promises to be a great exchange. I would like to also welcome our online audience. And so that you know already, we will have some time for Q&A at the end of this session. So please do put your question in the Q&A stage window. We also wanted to let you know that today's session is being recorded and it will be shared on Saint-Gobain YouTube channel. So to get us started, I think we are all very aware that 2021 is a very important year for climate action. According to climate scientists, we are at the start of a decisive decade for humanity, with a target of a 50% reduction of carbon emission by 2030. So as we head towards the COP26 to take place in November in Glasgow, the public and private sectors really need to prioritize systemic action and collaboration across all industries. Our question for the building sector today is the following. How can we build an environment, how can the built environment supply chain be transformed into a value chain based on circular economy principle and greater collaboration between supply chain actors? In this spirit, we are pleased to gather leaders from different parts of the supply chain today. And our first speaker today that I'm pleased to call upon is Benoît Bazin, the CEO of Saint-Gobain. Benoît Bazin is also the host of today's session. Welcome, Benoît.
Thanks very much, Sophie.
Let me just set you up for your introductory comment, Benoît. What I would like to ask you today is why Saint-Gobain has decided to frame our conversation in terms of transforming the supply chain into a collaborative value chain. And in a few words, if you could tell us, what does it mean for Saint-Gobain as a company?
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be with all our speakers and the top panel today. We know that 40% of the world's CO2 emissions come from buildings. So the challenge to reach carbon neutrality is to build better buildings. When you think of the value chain of the building and construction sector, it is rather complex, fragmented, and sometimes actually conservative. I refer to homeowners, architects, engineering companies, investors, local municipalities or central governments, also the general contractor, the craftsmen, and the manufacturers, the distributors like Saint-Gobain. So when it comes to reaching net zero carbon commitments, it only makes sense in a more general framework where we are truly in a collaborative mode. We cannot achieve it alone, and therefore a change within the whole supply chain in terms of collaboration, in terms of common roadmaps, targets for all players, a new level of partnership is of the essence. This is the reason why we at Saint-Gobain, we wanted to call for this panel and deep discussion. Back to you, Sophie.
Thank you very much, Benoît. And you'll be glad to know that we are not alone today to discuss this topic. And as we have many leaders in the supply chain that are joining us. So I'd like to welcome you, Anika Johansson, CEO of Stora Enso, Maria Isabel Echeverri, Vice President Legal and Sustainability at Cementos Argos, and Arvind Subramanian, Managing Director, CEO of Mahindra Life Spaces. Welcome to all of you. So what I'm going to ask you in a first lightning round is to tell me how are your companies approaching supply chain sustainability? What is the headline about your approach? And in a sentence or two, why this approach? Anika, I will start with you.
hello, everyone, and it's a true pleasure to be invited to this forum. And as Benoit mentioned, no one can do this alone. I represent Stora Enso, and we are the renewable materials company. So we have innovations and solutions based on the wooden fiber. And as was mentioned, we are part of this ecosystem to drive change and transformation in a bioeconomy. So today, I think we all acknowledge that it's no longer enough to just do less harm. We need business models that do not deplete our planet for resources, and that we can actually reverse the climate change that we are seeing around us. So for us as a company, being renewable and having renewable materials, we believe we are part of the ecosystem together with other partners and customers in this construction industry where we can really make a difference. So for us, we are targeting to have 100% regenerative products, which means products that are positive from climate impact, that are positive from circularity, but also since we are a big forest owner, we want to have a positive impact in our forest biodiversity area. So this is how we are approaching this. And as said, no one can do it alone. We need to work in the full ecosystem to reduce the climate impact of construction.
Great. Thank you, Anika. And we'll come back to you in a minute, going a little bit deeper on some of those points. Maria Isabel, what is the headline about your approach and why that approach?
Thank you, Sophie, and hello to everyone. I'm really glad and honored to be here speaking with you. So at Argos, we are a cement company. We're based in the Americas. We have presence in more than 16 countries. So we have a huge challenge regarding our supply chain because we are in emerging markets. And if I can summarize it in one sentence, it could be innovation and digital transformation towards a sustainable construction sector. We think that the building sector in general is way behind in some aspects, and us as leaders have the responsibility and the chance to help our different actors of the chain to try to evolve and to mobilize them into having more awareness and more responsibility regarding all the sustainability issues. And we really think that having really good digital channels and digital alternatives to interact with our customers, for example, or working hand by hand with them as an allies in sustainable construction, it's totally the way to go to try to move the chain into a very clear path and a very clear objective that we have established for us as a company also. So our role is to lead, to mobilize, and to try to develop the chain in a way that the innovation is on every day, but totally focused on sustainability.
Great, thank you for that. The scene is set with those ambitious comments, Maria. Arvind, can I come to you next about a headline about your approach in a sentence or two?
Sure. Hello, everyone. For me, sustainability at Mahindra Life Spaces is about how does sustainability fuel business model innovation, which in turn fuels economic advantage. So our business model innovation is centered around 4 themes. It is our offer design, so what we make for our customers. We're a real estate developer. It is our sales approach. It is how we construct, so construction methods and materials, and the living experience that our customers have living in our residential developments. And underpinning all of this is our sustainability policy, which we announced and articulated 3 years back, where the 4 pillars of our sustainability policy are sustainable communities, sustainable offices, sustainable sites, and sustainable products. So they map very well to the 4 business model innovation levers that we've chosen.
Thank you, Arvind. This is great. So I'm now going to go back to you, Anika, back to your ambition of 100% generative products. looking at the biodiversity of the forest. Maybe just a few words on Stora Enso first. As you said, you're a leading global provider of renewable solutions in packaging, biomaterial, wooden construction and paper, and a champion of the circular economy and biodiversity, as well as, I would say, a climate action leader more broadly. So if we were to focus a minute on the wooden construction part of your operation, what are the opportunities and challenges of wood as a sustainable building material, considering the context of our climate changing as you see it?
Well, if we start wood as a material, it really has a very important role to help reduce these 40% of emissions that the construction industry is today accountable for. And reducing greenhouse gas emissions, if you use wood, it can actually be a carbon sink for your building. So it's not the only solution, but it is part of the solution. So if with every kind of cube meter of wood used, you would reduce your CO2 emission by 1 to 2.5 tons of CO2, which is quite a lot if you kind of take into account the footprint of a whole construction or of a lifetime of a building. And since a building is there for 100 years and wood is a renewable material, it is a carbon sink for all the timing that the building is there. So we need to use that material as much as possible and transform kind of the construction. And it was said here that the construction industry is quite conservative, but at the same time, I believe we have the tools in our hands to really transform our supply chains if we want to do it together. So I can mention that the opportunities, if you use kind of renewable materials such as wood, is that you could reduce the CO2 footprint of a building by 75%. You could have increased productivity and faster construction for 8%, 80% less transportation by using less trucks, less noise, and of course, it's a nice environment to live in if it's based on wood. And some years ago, it was only for low-rise buildings, but nowadays we can see high-rise buildings that use massive wood construction as a base. But there are challenges, as mentioned. I think the collaboration and the will for collaboration in the ecosystem is there. But if you want to design a building to be carbon positive, or if you want to design a building to be circular, you have to do that from the beginning. You cannot come in late in the phase of construction and then try to kind of reduce the carbon footprint. So using the right materials that already exist early on, I think that's important, and design for circularity and low carbon footprint already from the beginning. And here digitalization can help a lot in enabling such collaboration. And then the other part is, of course, policy development in EU and many other countries that support this transformation. So we in Stora Enso, we are actively driving those discussions in EU. In France, for instance, the aim is to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 50% to 2030. Finland, another country, is committing to 45% and is promoting actively wooden buildings. And the European Commission is also kind of has set very ambitious targets in the life cycle of a building and reducing carbon emissions. So I think we're getting there with the new strategies that have been announced. But yeah.
Anika, let me pick up on some of the points you've made. You've made a lot of very interesting points. I mean, first of all, that wood needs to be considered in the conception of the building, not as an afterthought. You also referred to some of the challenge, and I wanted to maybe go back to the challenge related to reuse and recycling, circular economy principle, and how are you at Stora Enso innovating to take on these practices, particularly in relation to reuse and recycling?
Well, I'm quite proud to say that as a company, if we look at the whole product portfolio, we have been recycling forever. I mean, all of us know a recycled newspaper or magazine or cardboard board. So recycling and circularity is really in our DNA as a company. And if we look at wooden constructions now, there is nothing really hindering the fibers to be recycled. Once you deconstruct a building, you can put it apart, you can reuse the fibers 5, 7, 20 times over, and therefore use it for different construction elements and so on. So we have this know-how and expertise in our company to do that. Even if wood is one of the oldest kind of construction materials in the book, we have only made kind of complicated and complex construction setups the last 15 to 20 years. So none of the wooden buildings that are there today have actually been recycled. But there is no problem in actually deconstructing the building elements and reusing the wooden fibers used for same applications or different applications in the future. And this is somewhere we are working very actively with our expertise in the company.
Great. So there seems to be a lot of catching up to do in reusing all that wood that has been used in the past. I heard you also talking about digital transformation as a potential enabler of this. And can you talk us through a little bit more how digital transformation might decomplexify the supply chain, in particular around this question of how do we create better alignment and collaboration in the supply chain?
Well, I think we're all aware that Industry 4.0 and the abilities to connect and digitalize big parts of the process industry is ongoing. So we are a company that want to be a leader here. And if we're going to connect the ecosystem partners, we need to work with data flows across companies and be able to kind of digitalize the flows. So for instance, if we want to calculate a construction site's full carbon footprint, we need to have data flows that go throughout the companies and partners involved in such a project. So this is somewhere where we are putting a lot of effort in life cycle analysis and being able to do that transparently. And that builds, of course, on having trust and creating the necessary relationships between companies for the common good of getting a project or a building as good as possible from a sustainability perspective. So we are working, for instance, with digital twins and life cycle analysis ledgers. Here we can learn a lot from the car industry that has done that with its suppliers for many years. So having those tools, we help design for circularity and for sustainability already in the beginning. And these are the areas where we want to partner up with common thinkers to drive that change.
Yeah, no, that's a super interesting point. And what you said about, digitalization creates the opportunity for common processes, but also trust in the way data is shared. And I can see that being potentially a key opportunity, but also a pain point. So I just want to mention to the other speakers, if there are points that these speakers mentioned that you want to pick up on, I hope we can really go back to some of those points later. So thank you very much, Anika. We'll come back to you in a bit. I just wanted now to invite Maria Isabel to join us for this segment of the conversation. So Maria, Argos is a leading cement producer in the United States and Latin America. In your introductory statement, you were talking about material innovation and digital transformation. I just wanted to put a question to you. What are the particular challenges for the cement industry as clearly a very hard to abate sector to contribute to net zero?
Yes, Sophie. So as an industry, we have been working together hand by hand because, again, the collaborative approach is the one that we truly believe in. And we have been committed to a climate ambition plan that was promoted inside the Global Cement and Concrete Association. So even though as a sector we have done a huge effort and we have reduced almost 20% our emissions since 1990, we still have really big challenges to face. For example, we need to eliminate our direct energy-related emissions and maximize co-processing of waste from other industries. That it's something that we use as a substitute for fossil fuels, and that's a huge opportunity that we have as a cement industry, the co-processing of other waste from other industries, and we need to work a lot and really, really hard around that. Also reducing and eliminating our indirect emissions through different renewables electricity sources where we can find them available. Also, the hardest one is reducing our process emissions through new technologies and the deployment of carbon capture at a really industrial scale. That's a huge, huge challenge that we have as an industry. Also reducing both the clinker in the cement and the cement in the concrete, as well as having a more efficient use of concrete in building and infrastructure. Reprocessing concrete from construction and demolition and demolition waste is also a huge opportunity that we have and that we need to work so we can reduce the use of natural aggregates and try to have more recycled aggregates in the concrete manufacturing. And then I think the last challenge that we have is quantifying and enhancing the level of CO2 uptake of concrete through recarbonization, and also circular economy in the whole life of the product.
Thank you, Maria Isabel, for that list of challenges. The question now is, how are you addressing those challenges, and maybe what part do you see the other players in the supply chain playing in contributing to addressing those challenges?
Sure. So at Arcos, we have been working really hard into that. We have reduced almost 15% our footprint since 2006, but we have a huge challenge among us. So we updated our climate change strategy, and we have been making very good progress achieving those goals that we have established, focused on mitigation and adaptation through different innovative initiatives, and also managing all the opportunities that are related to these risks. So our strategy is focused like in several points. And one is the supply and the production, the products and the solutions, innovation, even governance of this, because this requires a lot of commitment from us as leaders of the organization and leaders again in the industry. A lot of responsible investment. So planning all the decisions around the footprint is something that we really care and we take really, really serious. So we defined a roadmap that guides our actions in mitigation and adaptation to this climate change strategy. And we have been investigating a lot. For example, I would like to highlight 2 or 3 projects that are really relevant for us. First is the microalgae investigation that allows, as I told you in a few minutes ago, the carbon capture use or storage is a huge challenge for us. So we have been investigating a lot, and we are now using microalgae at an industrial level. So it allows us to really have good hopes around the possibilities of as an industry working together. We have committed also among the GCCA to produce in 2050 a net zero concrete. Today, that's from a scientific base, that's not possible. So it's a huge challenge, and we have been establishing that roadmap to try to achieve that.
Interesting. What if I look at what you might expect of your customers? What change could the customer for cement product make that would contribute to progress to net zero for companies like yours? What are your expectations?
Sure. So here the word is sustainable construction. Concrete is a material that has a lot of benefits in its usage. So it's durable, it's non-flammable, it's recyclable, affordable, and due to the wide range of uses that it has, it brings a lot of opportunities for the construction sector. So we have been, and we expect to work hand by hand with architects and builders, try to include that in the design of the different projects, call them infrastructure or regular buildings. So we've been encouraging our customers implementing these different sustainable constructions in the design and the developing of the projects. Also, we are permanently speaking with our customers. We have different strategies based on training, education, continuous feedback with them, and we have been, again, remember that our company works in developing countries. So trying to move on the industry and try to involve them in this, understanding the necessity of having more environmentally friendly cities or buildings. It's something that we really care a lot, and we invest a lot of time and effort into that.
Great, thank you so much, Marie-Isabelle. It will be great again to hear what some of our other speakers have to say on those points. So thank you. I will we'll bring you back in a little bit, and I would like to invite Ravine to join us on the virtual stage. Ravine, in your headline for Mahindra Life Spaces, you said, for me, it's about working with developers to invest in a triple bottom line approach. And I see that when we look at your 2025 roadmap, that most of your supply chain efforts are currently directed at supplier and contractor training and at supplier self-assessment and code of conduct sensitization. Can you break this up a little bit for us? What kind of training have you found to be essential? What has worked? What can you share with us?
Sure. So Sophie, let me maybe start with just laying out what is our roadmap to 2025. And there are 5 very measurable aspects to that. First, we want to be sourcing 75% of our building materials within 400 kilometers from our project sites. Now, I know 400 kilometers might sound very far from some markets, but do remember India is a large country. So within 400 kilometers, we must source 75% by value of our building materials. This is to reduce the embodied carbon. The second is to look at our pre-qualification criteria for our supply chain partners and systematically increase the weightage of sustainability criteria to 20%. So 20% of the selection of the evaluation selection of supply chain partners will be based on sustainability criteria. The third is training, and how do we think about coverage of training? So we want by 2025, 100% of our contractors, the coverage should be 100%, and with our material suppliers, at least 75%. The fourth aspect is linked to the training is then supplier assessments and audits. So the top 50 suppliers will voluntarily do self-assessments, and we will do sample audits of them as well on their sustainability performance. And finally, the fifth element of our roadmap is to develop at least 5 sustainability initiatives along with our partners, along with our supply chain partners. Now, you asked me about what does this mean in terms of training. Let me actually touch upon 2 aspects. There is training and engagement, and then there is assessment, and both need to go hand in hand. So as we think about training, as I mentioned, there is pre-qualification, there is constant communication, expectation sharing, capacity building, etc. But importantly, we've recognized that it is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and we need different approaches for different kinds of supply chain partners. So for example, with our consultants, a lot of the engagement in training and enablement is based on green building certification and what it takes. It's about what are the evolving customer requirements and propositions that customers are keen about from a green building perspective, and that's what we work with our consultants on. On the other hand, when we look at our contractors who work with us at our project sites, we are leveraging our existing platforms of training and engagement. So we have what we call a toolbox talk, which is a huddle of our construction workers and supervisors, which is done regularly, typically several times a week. It's a standing meeting at the start of the day at the site. And historically, this would be primarily about certain trade skills or safety practices, but we've now also integrated into this same platform environment, health, safety, and energy, and have conversations around those. In addition, we also have specific days that are earmarked at our project sites for things like energy sensitization, or a single-use plastic sensitization, waste sensitization, etc. And finally, with suppliers, we work with the think tanks like WRI and the Confederation of Indian Industry to do seminars and trainings for our suppliers as well. Now, the flip side of the attendant with this is the whole approach to assessments, both self-assessments as well as partner assessments. And here, I think the key shift has been thinking about assessments as not just about compliance, but about commitment. Or the other way to think about it is moving from an obligation to an opportunity. And what do I mean by this? So, for example, we go far beyond just the legal requirements or the regulatory requirements. We are now signed up, one of the first real estate developers in India to sign up for science-based targets. We've been injecting sustainability into our governance, our management systems much more deeply to make it part of the ethos of the company. And we've been participating since 2014 in the Global Real Estate Sustainability Benchmark exercise, as well as the Carbon Disclosure Project. Again, these are initiatives or steps we've taken well ahead of time. So this is some of what we're doing.
If I can jump in here, thank you for that. And it's interesting because you really bring a different perspective to supply chain engagement. How would you say that has been the level of engagement of the supplier? Is that something that you feel takes a lot of incentivization, or people are really eager and hungry to receive that training? And then how do you see, can you maybe explain a little bit how you see the translation from training to adoption?
Yeah, look, like with most such journeys, there is both a push and pull to it. And we do need to incentivize, but equally, we are seeing several suppliers now wanting to embrace sustainable practices, because they do realize that this is going to become table stakes or almost a gating criteria in future to be able to work with leading real estate developers. So, and as I said, we've tried to keep the training as practical, as near to the rock face as possible, so that whatever we do in the enablement and training can immediately reflect in the work practices on site, in the policies, in the procedures, etc. So it's done in real time, and it's not a separate classroom session, which then may or may not get translated into actual work.
Great, thank you. And maybe just to bring that to life for our audience, could you give me maybe concrete example or how you've practically ensured your suppliers are in line with your sustainability strategy?
So let me take a very recent example. We are at a concept design stage for a new residential development in Mumbai. And we've brought in climate responsive design and our sustainability team right at the conceptualization stage. Earlier, very often these would be brought in at late stages. And as I think Anika was mentioning as well, it's very hard to retrofit sustainability onto a design, onto a journey which is already well underway. So we are starting to bring it in very early in the process at the product conceptualization and concept design stage itself, so that the entire design and development of the project stems from sustainability principles rather than having them thrust upon the project lead.
Great, thank you so much, Ravine. This I think makes it very palatable, this kind of example. So thank you for that, those comments and insights. I will bring you back in the conversation in a little bit, but I'd like to invite Benoit Bazin to join us back. Thank you, Benoit. I'm sure you had lots of thoughts and desire to react to what you heard just now. But if we focus a little bit first on Saint-Gobain, as a manufacturer, distributor of building materials and solutions, you really have a unique position in the value chain, including for end-of-life materials, which I know you're increasingly concerned and involved in handling. So my question to you is how can we make sure that we accelerate the transition to green and circular models? We have little time and lots to do. Can you just give us your perspective?
Well, thank you. I think that's been very inspiring, what we heard from Anika, Maria Isabel, and Arvind. And to rebound of what Arvind said, is that I think the work hand in hand with the building owners, the promoters, is very important because we have our own roadmap, our own effort to make towards carbon neutrality. We have made the pledge to be carbon neutral by 2050, and I will come back to that. But when you talk about measuring the impact, this is extremely important. And so talking about customers and looking outside when we provide materials and services from Saint-Gobain, I think it's very important to get to new ways of building. The lightweight construction is very important. Convince about the early stage of how to co-develop with promoters, builders. Off-site manufacturing could be also a way to go towards more circular economy, reduce waste, save on logistics, on the construction waste. So I think looking outside of Saint-Gobain, we promote all the solutions we have, and we want to maximize the impact of our solutions towards our customers. If you take product A, B, C together, if you bring that as a solution for facade, for interior, insulation, partitions, what is the solution and what is the impact it brings to the promoters and the builders? So measuring the impact and maximizing the impact is extremely important to us to work, again, like we have heard, hand to hand with all the value chain. So that's one. And on our internal perspective, we have to continue to work. We have made very good progress on the design of the product formulation of everything we manufacture and we distribute. So we measure scope 1 and 2. This is our manufacturing part, but we measure also the scope 3, being a distributor. And we have a big ask from all our partners to reduce their CO2 footprint, to improve on their roadmap towards carbon neutrality. So we have also this internal roadmap towards carbon neutrality by 2050. So it's a combination of minimizing our footprint and maximizing the impact of our solutions with the customers, with the builders, with new ways of working, moving towards lightweight construction, which saves a lot versus heavy traditional building materials. So a lot of inspiring and fascinating challenges.
Thank you, Benoit. If you look at the challenge of the transition and the collaboration that it calls for, how can we ensure that these efforts are not hindered by competition? Do you have example of balancing competition and a whole life low carbon approach and your perspective on the inevitable tension that come with that kind of collaboration would be really interesting.
Yes, it's something which is challenging going forward. We have set since 2016 an internal carbon price within Saint-Gobain. It used to be 30 euros, now it's 75 euros for CapEx decisions and 150 euros for all our R&D decisions. Of course, we know in Europe that there is a carbon price, but it's not the case everywhere around the world. So it could set the scene for a kind of distortion of competition. So I think it's very important going forward that we get some clarity, we get some visibility, some stability, from public bodies, governments around the carbon price in order to have a real level playing field across the different players. The products don't travel that much, but we could face some areas where you have a distortion of competition coming in front of the carbon neutrality efforts of the different players. So that's one important point to watch. And I think the strong signals the governments could give, hopefully at the COP26, on the carbon price around the world, I think would be a big step forward in our common efforts.
Thank you, Benoit. When we were preparing for this session, you gave me the example of an ask at a city level. I think that really contributed to accelerate action, but also accelerate collaboration between the different players. I'd love you to bring that into this conversation, because I think it really shows the potential of either regulation or strong leadership at a city level.
I think, as Ravine said, we need a push and a pull. Clearly, all the companies, at least the one on this panel, are pushing towards carbon neutrality. But sometimes having a strong pull from a new building owner, from a mayor, saying that I want my suburb in this place to be carbon neutral, because I know I will have some occupants, owners willing to go there. It makes sense for them. It gives a strong purpose for them to be in an eco environment. I think that can pull all the value chain together, because if they set the scene to say anyone, the transportation company, the materials company, the distributors, the owners, the recycling of materials, everyone has to be carbon neutral, then there is just one common goal. So sometimes having a strong pull like that is very helpful. We see more and more of that. We see universities refreshing their buildings being carbon zero. We see some headquarters of private companies asking for the best, labels on carbon neutral buildings. So I think all those pull requests from the end customers is accelerating, and it can help all the value chain to be aligned.
And maybe a last question for this segment, then, Benoit, is back to this supply chain collaboration or value chain collaboration. If you had to tell us what is, in your view, most needed or what is missing, and we have an eye towards COP26 that you just alluded to. What do you think is most needed or missing the most from your perspective to be able to make this happen?
Well, I think it's setting very demanding standards for buildings. We see that happening in a lot of countries in Europe. The more we see that, the better. For a manufacturing player, we need a target, and then we know how to work towards the target. So building standards, demanding stability on those building standards, long-term view is one priority we should get. Then the second is also some request in order to have a true life cycle analysis across all the value chain. Anyone participating in this construction should provide a full life cycle analysis. And third, asking more and more a true digitalization of the value chain. So that, like we have seen on the aerospace industry, on the automotive industry, all the players could work together on the same digital platform in order to improve the cost, but not only the cost, the impact on the planet from the building. So building standards, a true life cycle analysis, and a true digitalization of the information, the collaboration will, I think, set strong signals for all the players on the value chain.
Great. And that last point about digitalization really links back to what Anika started with, and the trust in the system that this calls for. Thank you so much, Benoit. We will circle back to you and everyone else that has spoken up to now. So thank you, Benoit, Maria, Ravine, Anika, for sharing your insights. We are now going to go even further, and I'm going to be joined by Challenger that will give me a break, because they themselves going to be asking you some questions. So I would like to welcome Jim Lynch and Harper Burgersdottir. Jim is the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Autodesk Construction Solutions. Welcome, Jim. And Harper is Professor and Head of the Research Group on Sustainability of Building at BUILD, Department of the Built Environment at Aalborg University in Denmark. Harper, I'm not sure we can see you, but hopefully you will see us in a minute.
Yeah, so, I'm at least here.
Okay, I think your image is not visible for some reason, but at least we can hear you, and hopefully in a minute we can also see you.
Yeah.
So, Jim, I'll start with you, if I may. So, Jim, Autodesk is a leader in the architecture, engineering, and construction technology industry. So you're working directly with designers and builders. What would you say are some of the positive shifts you've seen in the construction life cycle as we move towards net zero? What can you share with us? And then I will invite you to also challenge back some of our speakers.
Sure. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you for Saint-Gobain for inviting Autodesk to participate in this really important discussion. In terms of positive shifts, I'm really encouraged by what I'm seeing from designers and builders around the globe as they embrace digital technology to drive better outcomes. And this is really part of the digital transformation that Anika spoke of earlier. Certainly, reducing operational energy consumption in new and existing buildings is a priority for Autodesk and our customers, and it's critically important. As we know, the built square footage is set to double by 2060. You know, to meet the global demands over the coming decades, average daily building output is said to have to increase by 30%. So a huge demand in front of us. We're certainly committed to helping the construction industry play its part and really decoupling the growth from the negative impact, you know, and to do it safely, quite frankly. Now, as both Anika and Maria stated, you can't come in late. You need to design early on for circularity and sustainability. And the good news is we're seeing more and more of our customers around the globe use technologies like the Embodied Carbon in Construction Calculator, or the EC3. This is freeware that's available to everyone. If you're not aware, EC3 enables fast material takeoff directly from a model, and it allows teams to begin to identify and address embodied carbon of structural material on a project and support carbon smart materials, both procurement and specification. So this allows companies to really use embodied carbon as a metric, which, as you know, is critically important. And we're seeing some great results. One customer saw a 30% reduction of embodied carbon when using this calculator to inform smart material selection for a new campus, and they didn't report any significant cost increase. So that's super, super encouraging. Another firm is turning to digital technology to build 40,000 environmentally sustainable housing units here in the United States by 2030. And then finally, you know, Anika mentioned digital twins. Certainly the role of technology, such as Material Passport in digital twins, is where construction teams can absolutely better document the life of materials, where they start, where they're shipped, where they're installed, how they age, how they're maintained, really to facilitate material recovery, reuse, refurbishment, and recycling at end of life. So I'm really encouraged what I'm seeing in terms of positive shifts. We have a long way to go, but we're making good progress.
Thank you for this, Jim. So how does this perspective lead you in terms of a question for this exchange on bringing supply chain partners along the net zero journey?
Yeah, okay. So by the way, the discussion has been really fantastic. So I'm happy to get a chance to answer a question. You know, we've certainly seen and heard from our customers globally a significant shift towards more manufacturing practices. This is what we call the convergence of construction and manufacturing, but we've seen more of that come into the built environment. Things such as off-site-based construction, prefabrication. Benoit actually mentioned some of these concepts. You know, I think they're super important because they greatly reduce waste and emissions. And I guess my question is how has the supply chain shifted to really encourage more of these off-site building practices?
Thank you, Jim. And maybe, Benoit, do you want to go first? And anyone else that want to join in, please indicate in the chat.
Yes, you know, I think it varies a lot country by country from my perspective. I remember being in Stockholm in 2017, and the city of Stockholm was asking for it. And we have seen a double-digit growth on off-site manufacturing in some countries, particularly in the Nordic countries, then in the UK, and then it's coming to Germany. On our side, we made acquisitions around that. So it's growing. Sometimes I would say there is a bit of a conservative view on off-site manufacturing regarding quality, regarding long series in terms of risk for the architect, but I think we can overcome that with all the digital tools, the modern tools of manufacturing. One point, Jim, which is related to that, which I find personally fascinating for the construction industry going forward, is the attractiveness on the jobs. Sometimes a lot of governments, parents, are still looking at construction jobs as the old ways from the 60s or the 20s. But today, it's an innovative, digital-friendly, modern job with a lot of technology. So I think in order to also change the speed of the supply chain towards carbon neutrality, modern construction, lightweight construction, solutions for the planet, we need to make the jobs attractive, and indeed they are. So I think we need to advertise that you are going to work with Autodesk if you are a builder. You are going to work with innovation. You are going to capture CO2 sensors. So I think the attractiveness of the industry is going to dramatically change for the better. So that's, I think, for me, a very positive sign. All of us, we have to do our job, but digital will help for sure to attract the young generation, I would say.
Thank you, Benoit. I think it's an industry transformation, and the potential for impact is amazing, and therefore the ability to attract a diverse workforce. Anika, I know you wanted to react as well to what Jim said or asked.
Yes, I think the concept of prefabrication is one that is hugely important, and it is where we can collaborate with different materials, making kind of the construction a safer construction, a quicker construction. It was mentioned here, lightweight materials. So it is the combination of each material strength into a prefabricated setting that is really going to bring the high tech, I think, in both productivity development, in sustainability development, and so on. So for us, for instance, using some CLT, which is cross-laminated timber for high-rise buildings, and combining that with other materials, hybrid prefabricated solutions. That, I think, is a very interesting way forward. And as said, construction doesn't have to be manual, heavy, and difficult for the workers. We have to bring in the modern technology. And speaking about sensors and so on, if you have prefabricated elements, you can already from the beginning put in the sensors you want to kind of monitor your building's performance throughout its lifetime. So there are a lot of advantages in this area.
Great, thank you, Anika. And Arvind, very quickly, I think it would be interesting to get your perspective from India about these questions and the regional differences that we can draw from that.
Yeah, look, I think the idea of or the whole shift towards offsite construction or prefabricated construction is a very, very important shift. Now, in a country like India, and I suspect this is true of other developing markets as well, this needs to be enabled by perhaps the confluence of three forces. One is the sustainability stimulus around, less waste, lower carbon, etc. But equally, there are two others. There's the whole labor and capital trade-off, which historically in developing markets has always, the conventional wisdom is, labor is cheap, therefore let me not invest too much in mechanization, off-site manufacturing, etc. That is, of course, changing. Labor availability is declining because it's people don't necessarily want to work at construction sites, and B, skilled labor in particular is becoming extremely expensive. But the third leg to this three-legged stool is about the economics of our business. Again, historically, in a market like India, developers would get advantage by holding land assets, and the appreciation in land was what was giving them value creation. Increasingly, particularly over the last 5 years, and I think for many decades to come, it is about conversion. How do you convert land into finished and sold apartments that are occupied by customers? Now, if you think of your business as a conversion business rather than as a land monetization business, it changes your lens around speed being a key lever. And so if I then combine these three elements of sustainability, labor economics, labor capital trade-off, and the fundamental value creation in real estate development, all three will boost the need for offsite manufacturing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ravine. Harper, it's good to see you.
Yeah.
If I may introduce you to the audience here, you told us in agreeing to speak in this session that, in your view, to avoid climate catastrophe, it is crucial for players in the built environment sector to focus on reducing the upfront embodied carbon, while at the same time embedding circular economy principle in construction. A tall order. So can you tell us in a few words, what are these circular economy principles and what it will take, in your view, to implement them?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the invitation. Yeah, it's not easy. We have to think about how to reduce now, but also think about the future, you know, in the whole life cycle. So there is no question about the importance of buildings being responsible for about 40% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and that we know it is divided into that, like 11% is from the materials and 28% is from the operational energy. So we have to focus on both, and that is why this life cycle approach is so important for us to focus on. And the urgency that we have now in the requirements of reducing the greenhouse gas emissions gives us the focus on the upfront emissions, so the embodied carbon in materials. And here we need to think differently in new construction and in the existing buildings for renovation of those. So, so for the new construction, we can see that there's a huge potential in reducing the embodied upfront carbon in buildings. So here it is so important that we get some requirements implemented to focus on the life cycle impact, so to focus on the embodied carbon. It is so important that we have tools available and data from the producers on this, and also learnings in the industry, so the designers know what to work with. So when we look at circular strategies, yeah, it is we can see the huge potential in reducing the upfront emissions by focusing on doing an LCA, calculating the embodied carbon in buildings, having the data available. But then also, when we talk about circular strategies, the reuse and recycling, to work with that. So there's not one solution for, you know, what principle to use, but the main focus that we have focused now on the whole life carbon emissions, so that life cycle assessments gets into as a new discipline in our building design processes.
Thank you, Harper. And I believe you have a question as well to our panelists that I'd like you to put to them.
Yeah, and I would like to focus first on the producers, the manufacturers. So from the viewpoint of designers that want to reduce the embodied impacts of buildings, yeah, this is a new discipline for them. So here it is really important for them to have data and knowledge about the different materials. But studies show there's a large variation in the environmental impacts within the categories of different product types. So this is seen actually for all products. There is a large variation, including wooden products, insulation, concrete, and bricks, and so on. So my question to the manufacturers is, how can they support and improve within those categories?
And Marie-Isabelle is putting herself volunteer for that. And then
Sure,
Benoit.
sure.
So Benoit, you're in mute. So we go Marie-Isabelle first, and then Anika, then Benoit.
Okay.
Okay. So again, here the collaborative approach is really, really relevant because as Harper said, it's important for our customers to understand the real impact of the products they are using and purchasing. So here the environmental product declarations are a very relevant topic to address. And again, there's a lot of questioning around the criteria that is used to establish the impact. For example, So again, we have been working as the cement industry together, defining the criteria for these environmental product declarations, which are the terms that should be used for among all of us. So because if not, there will be also like an unfair competition, because if there's no like a standardized tool or criteria to determine the real impact of a product, it's not fair. So we have worked a lot into an EPD tool called Quantis to conduct the product life cycle assessment that guarantees the compliance not only of the PCR rules for our products, but in general to standardize a little bit that. Those type of initiatives, in my opinion, are really relevant and can help a lot. Our customers should trust in the kind of products they are purchasing from ours.
Thank you, Isabel. Anika?
One important way, but then we need to understand that life cycle analysis varies, and the result of a life cycle analysis varies across different projects. And depending on the distances you have to transport things, or the type of materials that are available, you get different results, and that is okay. But every project needs to be handled through kind of the criteria that are relevant for that project. And the material selection needs to be done for the circumstances that fit that project. So that, I think, is one key element in this. And then having the standard as a background to kind of ensure that you have the same kind of way of viewing your life cycle analysis, that is, of course, important. But there are a lot of tools that are being developed here, and I'm quite confident that we will get more support for the designers and the architects in this area. We are doing a lot of work ourselves to be able to support our customers in this area. And then having science-based targets, I think that is important, that you have facts and figures, and it's not just kind of talk. And Stora Enso, we have had science-based targets since 2014. So this is just a step that we are taking in this area as well.
Thank you very much, Anika. And Benoit, and before you start, Benoit Harper, after that, we only have time for a remark by you, if you can react to what the response you got to your answer before we move to the next segment. So, Benoit. Yes.
Yeah, very quickly, we embarked on this journey some years ago. So we have today 1,300 product families with an EPD. We are also certified with the Science-Based Targets Initiative. So that's very important for Saint-Gobain, and we move forward fast on that. One point that you mentioned, Harper, which is very interesting, is on the renovation market, because we know in Europe at least 90 to 95% of the topic is on renovation, and therefore we decided to measure the impact of our solutions, not only the product itself, but how they are installed as a renovation solution. We do that with our building science, measuring on site what it means to have a full energy efficiency renovation of a single family home in France. And we get that audited by third party, by third bodies. So I think, all the producers are moving very seriously on that. We are doing that clearly within Saint-Gobain. And on top of that, the renovation market, which is critical for Europe on carbon neutrality, we measure not only the product, but how they are installed and how much they save on CO2, on thermal efficiency after the renovation is done. So it's very important that we continue to move forward fast and seriously on that topic of renovation.
Thank you, Benoit and Harper. I want to give you the closing word on this segment.
Yeah, I would just like to thank you all for your answers, and I am actually totally agree on helping the designers with different solutions, like Benoit just mentioned, and also especially for the renovation, renovation strategy. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Harper, and thank you everyone for your contribution. We clearly needed more time for these segments. But so we're now going to moving to the last part of our session, which is the closing session. And I will attempt to replay back some of the key points from today's sessions, and then Benoit will have the final word. So I think if I have a go at doing this, I would say that our goal should be business model for the built environment that on one hand no longer do harm, but even better or more ambitiously can reverse climate change. How? Some key points that I've drawn from the conversation: renewable materials and increasingly ambitious sustainable construction products, whether prefabrication, lightweight materials, wood. 2, digitalization to reduce operational energy consumption, to decomplexify the supply chain on the model of the auto industry, for example, common processes, also trust in the way that data is shared, enabling much more efficient recycling and reuse. 3, move the whole life of a building design and robust carbon measurement, not just recycling, planning the initial design onwards for end-of-life deconstruction and reuse, true life cycle analysis. And key enabler of all these how is obviously collaboration for this all along the supply chain, which was really a key topic, focus of our conversation. So some key takeaway from that would be 1, bring in new players, 2, supplier training and assessment, 3, working to shift client expectation in developing countries, 4, and last but not least, a pull for net zero from clients, whether universities, private sector companies, cities. This is obviously a very lightning round summary of a very, very rich conversation, but I thought I would give this a go. I would also want to highlight, I think, the very important point, Benoit, that you make at in your contribution, which is the need to level the playing field by public authorities so that net zero building is not put, those that follow the net zero race are not put at a competitive disadvantage. So before we go to Benoit, I would like to now take some questions from the audience, and Benoit, that will give you a bit more time to think about your closing remarks. And we're getting quite a few questions actually, which is exciting. So the first one I will bring out to the conversation is the following: how can we ensure suppliers in geographies where regulation and standards are higher are not made put at a competitive disadvantage where vis-a-vis suppliers in geographies where regulation may be more relaxed? Any takers?
I can start, perhaps.
Thank you, Anika.
I think that if we all are leaders and we have a responsibility to our children and grandchildren looking forward, I think we all realize that we have a responsibility, whether or not regulation puts us in that position, but to do better for the future generations. And if we have that ambition as leaders, we will not limit ourselves to just do the bare minimum of what the regulation sets for us. And if we can adapt our businesses to comply with and also exceed the expectations of the most challenging markets, I think we will do good for the societies that we are, whether or not the regulation is ambitious or not. So I think it comes back to leadership and what your company want to be remembered for in the future. And I think with responsible leadership, we will take the necessary steps.
Thank you, Anika.
I couldn't agree more. It's we are taking the lead, and we shoot for the better and the highest standard around the world. There is no other alternative, that's for sure.
Any other comments? Okay, so maybe I'll move to the next question, and I think it'd be good if we keep everybody on screen so that I can see who wants to contribute. So we have spoken a lot about circularity is one of the questions. How does extending the life of buildings that are already built play into that? And how might this vary from one geography to another? Great question. Who wants to take that?
Maybe.
Marie-Isabelle?
Sure, I can so that's indeed one of the huge opportunities, in my opinion, that we have as the sector. Not only a challenge, but an opportunity, because the reality is that the way our cities are established in many countries, we have a lot of old buildings that we can improve, and we can use all the innovation and all the creativity to try to bring new and better practices and better materials to those buildings. So I see it more as an opportunity, and we can work really collaboratively into that. There are big associations thinking a lot of things to do, especially in the area where we're based, and the US also, and there are huge opportunities around that, and I don't see it as a bad thing, but a good thing in that sense.
Great. I think we reaching to the end of our session. We had another question that, again, Benoit, giving you a little bit of warning notice for your closing remark, but we had another question that I thought was very interesting. Companies are committing to 2050, 2040 for net zero. What could be manifestation of action today when we know that the action we're going to do today are going to be the future predictor of the situation we'll be facing in 2040 and 2050. But we don't have enough time for that. So as our host, Benoit, I would love to ask you to tell us some of your key takeaways for today's audience, and the point that you would personally like to reinforce to them.
Thank you very much, Sophie. And again, many warm thanks to all the speakers, because I think we have given a lot of inspiration and a great sign of collaboration. So I think it's a very good base. And maybe I will just take on the last question to say just for Saint-Gobain, a float line to manufacture glass, it does last 20 years. So if we want to build in 2030 something which will be carbon neutral by 2050, we need to get it done on the R&D process side by 2025. It's tomorrow. So it's not in 20 years from now, it's tomorrow morning, 3-4 years down the road, we have to have the technology net zero for 2030. So as a conclusion, what I would say is that first, there is a clear need for a holistic approach and to take it at the early stage of the building activity so that we have a better collaboration. So I think we were all aligned to say the earlier we take on the decisions and we involve all the partners, the better and the higher the impact it will have on carbon neutrality. The second point I would make is that there is clearly urgency everywhere. It's not the developed countries first and the emerging countries second. We have great examples from Ravine in India. We can move and make progress everywhere at the same time, and that's what's needed. The third piece I would highlight is that there is a need for better clarity, either on building regulations from public bodies, on CO2 price, on life cycle analysis tools, so that we share a common language and we have visibility and stability on how to make and measure the progress we make down the road. And maybe the last point, which is what we heard also from Jim, from Anika and Maria Isabel on all the progress we have made, there is a big ask for innovation, a big ask for digital. We have also a big ask for new ways of building, lightweight construction, wood, all kinds of new materials and recycled materials, whether it's cement, whatever. So I think we need to give to ourselves a bit of races to the moon, what I call race to the moon. We had the goal to have the first net zero carbon plasterboard plant around the world. And we announced that for Norway a few months ago to have the first net zero carbon plasterboard plant worldwide. So I think having for all of us a bit of even more innovation challenges, digital, races to the moon for our internal teams or outside world, I think it's quite fascinating. And the last word I would make is that it makes the overall construction universe very attractive for jobs, very attractive for engineers, for product managers, for researchers, because we are essential to the life of any habitant around the world. We are essential for carbon neutrality down the road. And those jobs are modern, digital, innovative, collaborative, attractive. So it's, for me, a very positive note to say we are going to make it happen. I'm very confident. And the more collaboration, the bigger the impact towards carbon neutrality. I'm very confident again that it will be a success. So again, thank you, Sophie, for monitoring and mentoring all of us, and thank you warmly to all the participants. We are off a great start, and hopefully it will inspire the COP26 leaders. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you, Benoit. And I love this, finishing on that race to the moon mindset and calling on the ingenuity and diversity of talent to contribute to that in the building industry. So thank you, everyone, for your great contribution. Today's event is the second of a series that Saint-Gobain is hosting on the net zero transformation of the built environment. We'll be back in November at COP26 with a third and final session. I hope many of you will be able to join us in person or virtually. And the idea of this event is really to come with a call to action to create change at the pace and scale that we must achieve in light of the climate crisis. So thank you very much, all of you, for your insights, energy, and inspiration. Bye, everyone.